So tonight, inshallah, we're going to do the Tafsir of Surah number 94, Surah Al-Inshirāḥ. This is an early Meccan Surah. It's, according to the ulama, it's the 12th Surah that was revealed upon the heart of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It proceeds ad-Dhuha, that's number 11, ad-Dhuha. And then you have Al-Inshirāḥ, which is also called Al-Sharh. We'll talk about the meanings of these different names. And then Wal-Asr is number 13 to proceed after this surah. So ad-Dhuha, Inshirāḥ, and then Wal-Asr. If you look at the structure of the surah, very interesting. Some of these chapters in Juz' Amma, in the last 30th of the Qur'an, have a ring structure. So there's 8 verses in the surah. So the first 4, we have 4 rhetorical questions. Istifham taqreer. Istifham taqreer. Rhetorical questions. We'll talk about what this means. But basically what we have here are reminders. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of blessings with respect to the past. Okay? 4 rhetorical questions reminding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of blessings from the past. The last 2 are 2 commands to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by extension to all of us, because every command to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Qur'an is also a command to his ummah, unless it's stated explicitly according to Imam Shafi'i that it's only to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these commands are with respect to the future. So then in the middle then, verses 5 and 6, this is seen as the focus. So this A corresponds with this A, and then between them you have this focus. This is called a chiasmus in Greek, or chiastic structure. It's very common in the Qur'an. Western scholars like Karl Ernst and Michelle Kuypers, they've studied the Qur'an in detail. Even the longer surahs have this sort of structure. There's a book called The Banquet, if you're interested in The Banquet, by a man named Michelle Kuypers, which he says all of Surah Al-Ma'idah is one big chiasm. In other words, the beginning of the surah is similar to the end of the surah. There's a correlation. The second part of Al-Ma'idah is similar to the second to last part of the surah, and so on and so forth until you get to a focus of the surah. So you have to remember now the Prophet ﷺ, this surah is 120 some odd ayat, and the Prophet ﷺ is not writing down the surah, and it's being revealed to him over a few years. So it's virtually impossible for somebody to keep track of this chiasmus just sort of orally over a few years. And it's possible, but extremely, extremely difficult to do that. He actually won an award by the government of Iran, gave him an award for this book called The Banquet. And according to Karl Ernst, in fact, all of Al-Baqarah is one big ring structure also, the entire Surah Baqarah, right? Because the surah is a literary unit. It's not a bunch of verses that don't relate to one another. There's a correlation in the surah itself. Does everyone understand what's going on here? The focus here is in the middle, right? So you have 4 rhetorical questions. Then you have, in the middle, you have a focus, which is a promise. And then you have 2 commands. So essentially in the surah, it's, didn't I do this? Therefore, I promise this, so do this. Right? Didn't I do this? Therefore, I promise this, so do this. That's essentially what the surah is saying. So this is part of a group of surahs that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ in the early Meccan period that act as consolation for him. So things are going badly for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of persecution of the early Muslims. So this surah is considered one of the so-called surahs of consolation, to console him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just like the surah that came before it, surah number 93, ad-Dhuha, is included in this group. Also Surah Al-Masad, also called Abi Lahab, Surah 111, and all of these surahs culminate in Surah 108, al-Kawthar. Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. Right? It's very interesting. This surah, Kawthar, is also a chiasmus. It has a ring structure. Because the opposite of Kawthar is Abtar. Right? The last word in the first verse is Kawthar. The last word of the third verse is Abtar. These correlate. So then the focus of the surah is in the middle. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Right? Worship your Lord and sacrifice for His sake. This is the focus of the surah. This is a theory, right? That these surahs of the Qur'an have this sort of structure, but it's pretty popular amongst Western academics nowadays. Wallahu a'lam. So there's different names of this surah. Imam al-Bukhari and Imam al-Tirmidhi in the Sunnah, they simply called it Surah Al-Inshirāḥ lak. Al-Inshirāḥ lak. Other ulama, they call it Al-Sharh. Al-Sharh. And yet other ulama call it Al-Inshirāḥ. What is Sharh? It means to expound upon something, to explain something, or to widen, to dilate something. Okay, we'll talk more about what this means, inshallah ta'ala. Ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he would recite ad-Dhuha and Al-Inshirāḥ in one rak'ah. So there's a correlation, there's a relationship between these two surahs. Ibn Abbas actually said that this surah is a continuation of the last surah. Fakhruddin al-Razi, in his Tafsir, he has something called al-Munasabat, where he actually shows the relationship between the surahs. Right? Why this surah comes after this surah? Why does it precede this one? What is the relationship actually between the surah? So within a surah, those coherence, right? There's a structure within the surah and then between the surahs. Inter-surah, intra-surah, right? Now, this surah and the one before it, ad-Dhuha, are specifically, exclusively addressed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you look at the text of the surah, I hope everyone has a mushaf or can follow along. Inshallah, maybe on your phone or something. And maybe, take a few notes, doesn't hurt. Especially for the Shabbat, if you're from the youth. You might be the MCC president one day, or you might, might give a khutbah, who knows, Allahu a'lam, one day. And then, maybe you have great memories, I don't know. Ibrahim al-Nakhai, he would never write anything down. Imam Shafi'i would rarely write things down. He would sort of write them on his hand with his finger. That's how he was sort of, there's nothing to look at later. But people were geniuses. So we should write things down because, inshallah ta'ala, the point here is increasing our knowledge. So the surah begins, Alam nashrah laka sadrak. In this alam, right? This is called Hamzatul Taqreer. Hamzatul Taqreer. This is used for a rhetorical question. What is a rhetorical question? What is the difference between a rhetorical question and a regular question? Does anyone know? Very good. She's an Arabic student. A regular question has a yes or no answer. There's a definite answer. And usually in Arabic, how does that question begin? Hal, very another Arabic. Hal ataka hadithul ghashiyah, right? Has the story of the ghashiyah, the overwhelming event, has it reached you? So the question, the answer is either na'am or la, right? If there's hal, there's a definite. Brother was nice enough to bring us some masahif. If you want to grab one, follow along, inshallah ta'ala, that'd be great. But here we have right? So then what is the purpose of a rhetorical question? Istifham taqreer. What is the purpose of it? The purpose is to remind someone of something that's already established. Taqreer means established, right? Qarra, from the verb qarra, to establish something. The purpose is not for you to get an answer from the person. It's a very effective way of reminding the person of something, right? For example, we go out to lunch with my kids, and an hour later they say, "We're hungry." I say, "Didn't we just eat?" Right? I'm not looking for a yes or no, because I already know, and they already know, right? So it reminds, oh yeah, we shouldn't ask it, right? Or if I beat somebody in one-on-one basketball, And then the next day I see him and he's talking trash to everyone. I'm the best basketball player. I said, didn't I beat you yesterday? Oh, right. So this is called a rhetorical question. Istifham taqrir. So when you say alam, when you see that in the Quran, alam, this is indicating istifham taqrir, a rhetorical question. It's going to get your attention. It wants to remind you of something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is reminding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about a past blessing using this rhetorical device of an istifham taqrir. Okay? And he says, alam nashrah. Nashrah, present active, jussive in its mood. That's for the Arabic students. Don't worry about it. We should all try to study some Arabic, by the way. Nashrah, right? This begins with a noon. What does that mean? We. This is first person common plural. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't say alam ashrah, right? He doesn't say didn't I. He says didn't we. We. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use a we? We talked about this last week a little bit. This noon is called noon ta'zim, according to Ibn Hisham. Noon ta'zim is jam'un maliki. It's a royal plural. The royal plural. This happens in many languages, even in Western languages, primarily in Semitic languages. Like the very first verse of the Torah is in Hebrew, Barashith bara Elohim et hashamayim. In the beginning, gods, plural, created the heavens and the earth. Right? But no rabbi would ever say, oh, that's because there's more than one God. No, they believe in Tawheed. But some of the Christians, on the other hand, when they look at this verse, they say things that are ajib and gharib, because they don't understand that this is a nuance in Semitic languages. So, alam nashrah. And the ulama say here, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the noon ta'zim, this denotes His greatness and majesty, but also denotes the greatness and majesty of the one He's addressing, the addressee, right? That the addressee has ta'zim and tashrif and takreem. And who is He addressing? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And also the ulama mentioned, just as an FYI for the note takers, that when you make dua, even if you're by yourself, you should pluralize them. Make your dua plural. So, subhanaka inna kunna min al-zalimin. If you know how to do it. If you don't know Arabic, then stick to what you know. But pluralize them. Fa'afu anna instead of fa'afu anni. Right? Include in your attention the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just as a side note for you. So, alam nashrah. Did we not nashrah from sharhun? So this word sharh, this is the masdar, the infinitive. It means to explain something, to open up the meanings of a complex issue, to clarify something. So if you read, for example, I studied the Meccan of the Ajrumiyya, if you study the Alfiya, these are books, treatises of Arabic grammar, they'll say, which sharh, which commentary did you study with it, right? So this is something that clarifies things that are complex. So throughout history, the ulama would write texts by distilling them. They would write mukhtasar of a mukhtasar of a mukhtasar, an abridgment of an abridgment of an abridgment, because they would assume that you're studying the text with a teacher, right, who could explain to you the background of the text and certain meanings of the text, things like that. They would assume that you would receive a sharh, an explanation, a commentary of any particular text that you're studying. So sharaha is a transitive verb. Sharaha. Does anyone know what a transitive verb means? It's called al-fi'l muta'addi in Arabic. Anyone who knows that? What's that? Somebody new? I know this one. What is it? You know? Yes. So fi'l muta'addi means you need to have an object. You need a direct object. For example, if I said, I slapped, and then I stopped, what would be your question? Who did you slap? Probably a bad example, right? Who did you slap? Right? Because why? To slap in English is a transitive verb. You need a what? A direct object. Or if I say, I brought, hello. you bring? I brought. What did you bring? I brought the chai. Dude, fucking chai? Dude, I have a joke. What did the cereal say to the milk? What's up, dude? That's an Urdu joke. Those who know Urdu are laughing hardly. Anyway, so the ulama say here that not only the Prophet ﷺ received the message, but was given the greatest openings of its meanings. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ is receiving the Qur'an ala qalbihi, upon his heart, but he's also having his sadr expanded with its meanings. He's receiving the Qur'an and he's the authority of the Qur'an in explaining the Qur'an. This is what the ulama say. Imam Suyuti says, bin nubuwati wa ghayriha. Explaining his nubuwah is prophecy and other things as well. Yes, sir.
And quick question. So this surah, the verse does not mean it's not related to the Isra and what happened with the story of him going to Jibreel, not in his chest and all that.
Yeah, we're talking about that inshallah. Even Kathir does mention that. He does mention it. Some of the ulama do mention it. We'll talk more about that in a minute, inshallah ta'ala. So, Al-Inshirāḥ. So the usual tartib, the word order in Arabic is fi'l, fa'il, and maf'ul. You have the verb, then you have the subject, then you have the direct object after the verb. But here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not say, Alam nashrah sadraka lak. That's the kind of normal word order. That the prepositional phrase, the jar majroor, should come at the end. That's kind of standard, modern standard Arabic. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, however, He brings the prepositional phrase forward, muqaddam, laka sadrak. And He delays the maf'ul bihi. He delays the direct object. We'll talk about that. So, laka, alam nashrah, did we not expand, did we not dilate, did we not explain laka, for you? Laka means for you. And the ulama say here, this lam is called lamu ta'adil, the lam of purpose, right? For you, because of you, for your sake. Did we not explain for your sake? This is a better translation. I brought two translations here in English. One is the famous Yusuf Ali, and there's a new one here, Ahmad Zaki Hamad, who's an Azhari scholar. It's a very good translation if you're interested. It's called The Glorious Qur'an by Dr. Ahmad Zaki Hamad, scholar at Al-Azhar University. And I forgot to mention last time as well, there's a beautiful Tafsir of the Qur'an that's been totally translated into a beautiful translation by, the original was done by Maulana Mufti Muhammad al-Shafi'i. He's from Pakistan. It was published at Darul Ulum. It's called Ma'arif al-Qur'an. Ma'arif al-Qur'an. You can actually find it online. It's 8 volumes. The entire hard copy, if you will, is in San Ramon Masjid. You want to look at it, but don't remove books from the masjid. Okay? You can just look at it. Put it back, take notes, maybe make a photocopy. Don't tell people, please. Copyright infringement. Ma'arif al-Quran, if you're interested in the very good English translation of a Tafsir. Anyway, so what does this mean then? What is the significance of bringing laka before the object? The prepositional phrase before the direct object is that it's more personal. It's more personal. It denotes qurb and mahabba, nearness, proximity of the Prophet ﷺ to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the significance of it. It denotes the maqam of the Prophet ﷺ. It also, according to the ulama, it creates shawq or tashweeq in the listener. What is tashweeq? Anticipation or longing or suspense for the direct object. This is why we should recite the Qur'an slowly. Right? The Prophet ﷺ would recite the Qur'an slowly, wouldn't rush. The point isn't to get to the end. So people think we have to do 5 khatam of Qur'an during Ramadan, so we're going to, what do you recite? Is that the Torah? Is it the New Testament? I can't even understand what you're saying. What's the point of that? Is when you listen, Alam nashrah laka, it's building anticipation What was expanded for you? What was it? And then Sūrat. And then you say, that's the point of the structure, is to create this tashwiq. Like one of my teachers said, it's like smelling the food, but you don't know where it is. It hasn't come out yet, right? You're in a restaurant, you're hungry, you're smelling, biryani, qabli palau, whatever, pizza. And then you're smelling it, you're starving, but you don't see it. So you have that hunger. This is called tashwiq, right? Al-Inshirāḥ laka sadrak. This is the climax of the ayah. So this is called iṭālatu dhikril maf'ūl, delaying the mention of the direct object. Very common in the Qur'an. Iṭālatu dhikril maf'ūl, delaying the mention of the object. Right? It's a rhetorical device in balagha. Balagha means rhetoric, advanced Arabic. Quite common in the Qur'an. The other reason for doing this is for ikhtisas, to denote exclusivity, that this is only for you. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Did we not expand for you only your sadr, your chest? Right? So this is called ikhtisas. Only for you and in a unique way. Because this expansion of the sadr is mentioned in other places in the Qur'an, but not like this, not in this type of special or exclusive way. So, alam nashrah laka sadrak. Now, the question was, is this a reference to the chest splitting of the Prophet ﷺ in the washing of his heart? This happened 2 or 3 times. Some of the ulama say it happened 4 times, right? We know definitely happened twice, because remember when we have hadith that seem to contradict, the ulama try to make what? What is it called? You have 2 hadith that are sound hadith, you have to make them work. You have to harmonize them. This is called al-jama'. Al-jama'. Right? So they say this happened at least twice in his life. Once when he was a child, when he was with the Bani Sa'ad, and the men came and split his chest, and they took out the habd shaitan that we talked about. And again, just before the Isra, Laylatul Isra, his heart was washed. Some of the exegetes do mention this. Qadi Abu Bakr bin Arabi and Imam al-Alusi say that this is not a reference to that. And this is the dominant opinion. That this sharh of the sadr is not the same as the shaqqa of the sadr. They're 2 different things. Right? This sharh, this expansion is not the shaqq, is not the splitting. They're 2 different things. They say it's incorrect to correlate the expansion of the chest with the splitting of the chest. So this is not an expansion or splitting, if you will, that is haqiqi. It's not literal, it's majaz. It's figurative. Okay? This is the dominant opinion. But some of the ulama do mention that one of the meanings could be the actual physical, haqiqi splitting of the chest of the Prophet ﷺ. Ibn Tafsir mentions it and other exegetes as well. Wallahu a'lam. Now, interesting here, there's iltifat. What is iltifat? Another rhetorical device, which literally means sudden change. Sudden change in person or sudden change in tense. Quite common in the Qur'an. Very confusing for people who don't know Arabic very well, like the classical Orientalists who know, intermediate Arabic at best. So they can translate the Qur'an. But then they say, why is this plural here and singular here, and why is this first person, and then we have third person? They don't understand this iltifat. But someone who's familiar with Arabic poetry will understand the purpose of that. So in Surah, the previous Surah, which again is linked to this Surah, according to Ibn Mas'ud, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking in the third person to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Right? Your Lord. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking third person to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But here in this surah, Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking in what person? First person. Have we not expanded for you? Have we not expanded because of you your chest? Right? So again, this denotes closeness to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, if you're familiar with other places in the Qur'an, There's a verse in Surah Taha, ayah number 25, when Musa alayhi salam was at the Shajara. What was his famous dua? Rabbi Shrah li Sadri. Right? Rabbi Shrah li Sadri. It's usually translated as, my Lord, expand for me my chest. What does that mean? According to the ulama, give me openings in this affair, increase me in meanings. Increase me in meanings so that I may have comfort or certitude or courage. So the ulama mentioned here, Musa alayhi salam, he had a talab, he had a request from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him this type of openings, these meanings, whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, bila talab, without any type of request from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to him. There's another verse in the Qur'an in Surah Al-An'am, Surah number 6, ayah number 125. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَن يَهْدِيَهُ نَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ. You can look up the ayah. That if Allah wants to guide somebody, He will expand his chest with Islam. Right? So Imam al-Tustari, he says, based on this ayah in Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 125, and this Surah, Al-Inshirāḥ, he says there's actually shahrain. There's two types. There's two types of expansion of the chest. The first is when someone first becomes Muslim. Right? When somebody first becomes Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expand that person's chest and give that person Islam. The second type of sharh, according to Imam al-Tustari, is this Muslim, during his progression or her progression, is given certain divine mysteries and climbs levels, ahwal and maqamat and manazil, the purpose of which is to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to increase in love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ulama mentioned also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say, Alam nashrah laka qalbak. Did we not expand for you your heart, your qalb? It says sadr. What is the difference? They say because the qalb actually receives the Qur'an, while the sadr understands the meanings of the Qur'an. Wallahu a'lam. The qalb is actually receiving the Qur'an, while the sadr, the chest, as it were, is understanding the meanings of the Qur'an. The sadr must be expanded because the Qur'an is weighty. The Qur'an is weighty. سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. We will reveal unto you a weighty word. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. If this Qur'an was revealed upon a mountain, you would have seen it crumble. Right? The Qur'an is weighty. The Prophet ﷺ, his sadr had to be expanded. Wallahu a'lam. There's a verse in Surah Hud, فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ, which means have istiqamah, be upright as you are commanded, as you have been commanded. The Prophet ﷺ said, this verse turned some of my beard hair gray. It's a very weighty verse. Surah Hud wa akhawatuha, he said. Hud and its sister surahs are well, I'm getting my V's and W's mixed up here. Minnesota Vikings. Were very weighty on the Prophet ﷺ. It actually turned his hair. He didn't have a lot of gray hair, by the way. A few. Ibn Umar said I counted 17 on his temples. Not like me. Basically 90%. Chemical imbalance, right? But his constitution is perfect. So even in his 60s, just a few gray hair. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They actually went there. 1, 2, 3. Ibn Umar is looking at 5, 6, 7. This is how much detail they wanted to know about the Prophet. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay, so meanings were given to the Prophet ﷺ in order to understand the revelation. No human being understands the Qur'an better than the Prophet ﷺ. The Qur'an revealed upon his heart, but explained upon his sadr. The meanings were open of the Qur'an from the Prophet ﷺ. And when you know the meanings of things, you have confidence, you have certitude, right? Like when I was a kid, I did this book report. I didn't read the book. I just kind of read the back of the book. And I went up there, I didn't know what I was saying. but I sort of summarized the back. So it seemed like I know what I was doing, right? Like when I'm doing the back of the book, right? And then the teacher said, well, what do you, can you elaborate on this? I was like in third grade. It was very embarrassing. But if I knew more about the book, if I had more insight to the meanings of certain things, then it increases your courage, your certitude, right? You have confidence. So this is the meaning of the dua of Musa alayhi salam, wallahu a'lam. In other words, give me meanings of what I'm doing so that I can increase in my confidence. Because he has to go to the most powerful man on earth at the time, the Fir'aun. Okay? So that's verse 1. Al-Inshirāḥ laka sadrak. Any questions on verse 1? Verse 1 to go on. Let's go to verse 2. وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ وَضَعَ عَنْ. So again, وَوَضَعْنَا, right? Nunu ta'zim. Again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the royal plural. And wada'a ala means to put on something. Wada'a an means to remove something, right? To remove. And alam, it still applies here. This is part of the rhetorical question, interrogatives, right? Did we not expand for you your chest and, in parentheses, did we not remove from you your wisdom, your burden, right? So we'll talk about this, inshallah. And this verse is actually grammatically connected to verse number 3. You can actually think of 2 and 3 as being almost the same verse, but it doesn't matter if they split it out, no problem. The verse numbers actually came much later in history. So what is this wisdom? وَوَدَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ. Did we not remove from you your burden? So a wisdom is a hamal shadid, a great burden, a great weight. The difference between a wizr and a hamal. Hamal is something that can be carried, from hamala, to carry. But a wizr is something that is just about to break you. You can barely carry it to the point where it's going to crush you. This is called a wizr. And in the Qur'an also, wizr is used synonymously for sin, a sin. وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. Right? That no one can bear the sins of another person. No one can bear the burdens. In this context, the sins of another person. And then we have al-qada. We'll talk more about how this relates to the Prophet ﷺ. Is the Prophet capable of sinning? What about before the bi'atah? What does that actually mean? What does that entail? We'll talk about that inshallah ta'ala. And then we have al-qada. This is from naqada, which means to break, to destroy, or to abolish. Like to break a contract, to break a bone. This is a causative form 4 in Arabic, al-qada, which means to crack, inqad. So it's a very graphic metaphor. If I stack bricks on this table, right, and the table starts to what? Make this sound. Cracking. I can't make it a plastic table. So it starts to crack. This is called inqad. Cracking because of a weight upon it, right? Or if I do this with my fingers, if you don't like this, you can plug your ears. There you go. Which you shouldn't do, by the way. By the way, doing this is makruh in the prayer. Just to let you know. People do it all the time, including myself. There are people get up and they have to every single time after the sajda, they have to crack their knees. So try to resist the urge. I'm speaking primarily to myself. This is called inqad, cracking. So imagine something on your back that's weighing you down so much that you can hear your back cracking, and you're just about to fall. You're just about to fall. This is the image that's given here in the Qur'an. So this is called majaz aqli. It's majaz aqli, which is a metaphor. Because what is a wizard? Can a wizard physically do that to someone's back? No, because a wizard is not something tangible. It's not concrete, right? So the point here is to demonstrate the burden of the Prophet ﷺ was really weighty. When he first received the revelation, it was weighty upon him, ﷺ, to the point, how can he describe the weightiness of the message? The burden of the da'wah. How can you put it into a metaphor? Imagine you're carrying bricks on your back, and your back is cracking, and you're about to fall. This is how he felt, ﷺ. Okay? So then what is this wisdom? What is the burden? So the ulama say this is a burden that is caused for a need for answers. A need for answers. He was searching. Remember, this surah again is related to the previous surah, ad-Dhuha. وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًا فَهَدَى. And you were ضَالًا. This does not mean, حاشا لله, that the Prophet ﷺ was astray or he was worshipping idols or because ضَالِينَ. It's related to that. But that's not what it means according to the ulama, according to the ijma' of the exegetes. ضَالًا here means that he was searching for something. He's searching for something. Okay? So he's searching for answers. And this greatly weighed him down, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, to the point where he lost interest in the tijara. He lost interest in business. He would go to the jabal, right, for days on end. He was deeply contemplative in his nature, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Deeply contemplative. If you saw the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in his solitude, you would think he was, it says that you would think that he was grieving, but he was just deeply contemplative. Right? People don't think anymore. They have to plug into something. But he was like that, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A lot of tafkir, right? A lot of tadabbur of things. This is how he was before the bi'atah, before the revelation actually came to him. But he has no answers. So this was seen as a great burden upon him. Someone who is so inquisitive, someone who wants to help people, someone who's so compassionate but doesn't know how to go about doing it. How does he do it? It was a great burden upon him. Almost broke his back. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So this is one of the meanings of wisdom. A great burden, a need for theological truth, a need for theological answers. So he needs guidance theologically, but also he has a desire for social reform. Social reform. Right? How much did the oppression of women hurt him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Because he says he loves women, and he doesn't mean anything sensual about, there's nothing licentious in that statement. He loves the feminine attributes that he had himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Or the bearing, wa'adul banat, killing children. How much did this affect him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Right? This was a wisdom on his back. Also, the relief of revelation after the Fatra. And we talked about, we didn't talk about the Surah. This was a family night or something. We did a Tafsir of ad-Dhuha. And the revelation stopped. And Imam Suyuti says, 15 yawm, that this stopped for 15 days. And the mushrikeen were making fun of the Prophet ﷺ. And they said, Inna rabbahu wadda'ahu wa qala'ahu. Verily his Lord has forsaken him and is angry with him. Right? So these types of insults affected him greatly, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this was like a wizard on his back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ in Surah Hijr, that verily we know that what they say constricts your heart. Right? The tafsir is that his words were affecting him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Remember we talked about this verse last week. This explains what? وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Remember the first level of tafsir? The riwayah. Right? Tafsir by transmission. The best type of transmission is Qur'an. Tafsir of the Qur'an, bil Qur'an, with the Qur'an. What does وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ mean? It means that verse. خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأَمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. Hold tightly to forgiveness, order towards the good, and don't worry about these jahilin. Don't let them affect you. Right? These people who say stupid things, these people who are ignorant, jahilin means ignorant people. They're trying to hurt you, just turn away from them, don't worry about it. Because it affected the Prophet ﷺ, because he had great concern for people. The more concern you have for people, the more they rebel against you, the more it's going to hurt you. Right? If you don't care about people, you don't care what they do, you don't care how they react to you. I don't care. Right? But if he has concern and love for people, which he did, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You cannot guide all those whom you love. Allah's telling him, you can't do that. Right? So this is an aspect of the wisdom, that there was a burden on his back because his people are making fun of him because of the break in the revelation. And finally, the burden of guidance for all of humanity. is upon him because he is the last messenger. So the burden of da'wah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again consoles the messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that your job is to deliver the message. Okay? Your job is to deliver the message. And it's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide. لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. It is not upon you, it's not getting wajib, it's not wajib upon you to guide them. Allah guides whom He wills. Right? It's a consolation to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. بَلِّغْ يَا أَيُّهَا الرَّسُولُ بَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ. Notify, bring the message to the people. What has been revealed to you, that's what you have to tell the people. Right? Tabligh. This is one of the, if you study theology, prophetology, nabuwat, there are 4 things that are wajib upon every prophet. One of them is tabligh. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands a prophet to say something or do something, he has to do it. He cannot keep it back. It's called kitman. To keep something back is mustahil. It's impossible for a prophet to do. Baligh, that's his job. That's his primary vocation, is to give tabligh of the Qur'an and explain the Qur'an. And if they don't believe, don't let that hurt you. But it did hurt him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He had such a compassionate heart. Right? What is the verse? Kahf. فَلَعَنَكَ نَفْسَكَ عَلَى. Yes, you're almost killing yourself with grief over them. Allah says in the Quran. I have to review age, getting older. I used to know these ayat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this ayah that you're almost killing yourself with grief because of their rejection of the message. This is how much concern he had. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The ulama also mentioned something interesting. They say also part of the wisdom, we're still talking about this one word. وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ. What is this wisdom? What is this burden? They say also the burden or the thought of his minor sins before the bi'tha bothered him. And these are not sins as we know them. Remember, according to the jumhur of the ulama, the Prophet ﷺ is incapable of performing any type of major sin or what would be a major sin, even though there's no sharia, because he is establishing a reputation, right? He has pre-prophetic miracles called irhas. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appeals to his character before the bi'tha, right? فَقَدْ لَبِثْتُ فِيكُمْ قُرُونًا مِنْ قَبْلِهِ. Right? Say to them, I have lived an entire lifetime before this. In other words, look at my reputation. I don't do these things. I've never done these things. And I was a sadiqul ameen. Right? So the nature of a sin of the Prophet ﷺ is a sin in the maqam. The higher a person has in a station with God, the more is expected of that person. So it becomes as if it's a sin. The more knowledge you have, the more is expected of you. Right? So I know some brothers that are going through major tribulation, like I've never seen type of tribulation. And they memorized the Qur'an and they pray tahajjud every night, right? And then they stop doing that. They stop reviewing the Qur'an, they stop praying tahajjud. So why is this all happening to me? Because more is expected from you, right? So the ulama say, hasanatul abrar, sayyiatul muqarrabin. The good deeds of the righteous are the sins of the most righteous. So a sin in the maqam, right? So, for example, some of the ulama say that it's a sin for a prophet to do something mubah. What is mubah? Simply means permissible. It's not a sin and it's not virtuous. It's just permissible. Some of the ulama say it's impossible for a prophet to do something mubah because a prophet is expected always to be virtuous. If we do something mubah, we say alhamdulillah. Why? Because we're not doing something makruh or haram, right? So that's good for us to do something mubah. But the ulama also say if you keep doing things that are permissible, they could add up to things. They could add up to a waste of time. For example, you watch a halal TV show, and then you say that's mubah, but then you watch another one and another one and another one, and oh, it's asr time. Let's delay it a little bit. No, that's ayat. That becomes makruh, maybe haram if you miss the prayer, right? So more is expected from the Prophet ﷺ. The ulama also mentioned the Sira that one time the Prophet was a very young man. He heard some of the shabab having a party, heard some music, and there was probably drinking, and I don't think they were checking IDs back then. And, it's frivolity, mixing of the genders. So he had curiosity. I want to see what's going on over there. He takes one step and he falls down. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not want him exposed to anything like that. He was just curious, just want to see what's going on, right? He said that I woke up and the sun was shining on my back. The sun woke me up. He slept the whole night. He missed the entire thing, this little party that the Shabab were having, right? So things like this. Imam Suyuti says, وَحَكَمَ فِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى لِيَغْفِرَ لَكَ اللَّهُ مَنْ تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِكَ. In order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may forgive your dhanb from the past, your sins of the past. Remember, the sin of a prophet is different than our sins. The sin of a prophet, we mentioned this many times, again, if you study theology, the sin of a prophet is leaving an act of great virtue for an act of lesser virtue. This is the sin of a prophet. Leave an act of great virtue for an act of lesser virtue. What is our sin? Adultery, murder, we lie, we kill, right? That's the sin of us. But the sin of a prophet, a dhanb of a prophet, is leaving an act of great virtue for an act of lesser virtue. The prophets are ma'soom. So then why does the Prophet ﷺ ask forgiveness? He asks forgiveness, he says, 70 times a day. This primarily after the salah, after the prayer. Why? Because of his inability to praise Allah as he should be praised. This is why he's making tawbah. Because of his inability. He says, Subhanaka la nuhsi thana'an alayk anta kama athnayta ala nafsik. Which basically means that, glory be to you, how can I praise you as you have praised yourself? This is why he's making istighfar. Why does a man who's ma'soom say astaghfirullah? Because he's unable to praise Allah. He's unable to praise Allah as Allah praised himself. This is why he's making istighfar. Why do we make istighfar? We lie, cheat, kill, ghiba, all of these types of things. These things are impossible for prophets. Okay? And also, only the Prophet ﷺ knew that all of his transgressions were completely forgiven. No other prophet knew this. This is why, according to the hadith shafa'ah, when they go to different prophets who are also ma'asum, they don't have a guarantee. There's a little bit of fear. Nafsi, nafsi. I don't know. Go to somebody else. Go to Isa alayhi salam. Nafsi, nafsi. Ruh Allah. Nafsi, nafsi. Go to Ahmad. Ana laha is what he said. I am for this. And he intercedes. He has the maqam of Mahmud, the station of the intercession. Also, the ulama mentioned something here. They say wizrak also includes the sins of the ummah. The sins of the ummah. His ummah. Sinning bothered him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because he was always thinking of the ummah. Right? There's a connection, special connection between the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his ummah. He has a special connection with us, so we need to have a special connection with him. Right? When he said, for example, I wish I could have seen my brothers. And the Sahaba said, aren't we your brothers? Yeah, but no, he said, no, you're my companions. Right? Who are my brothers? Those who come after me, who haven't seen me. Right? He has that special connection with us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He consoles the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. مَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَأَنْتَ فِيهِمْ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not punish them while you are amongst them. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ مُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَهُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. Allah will not punish them while they're making istighfar. So the Prophet is not amongst us, then we make istighfar. So the Prophet ﷺ was thinking about the ummah quite regularly. The hadith of Aisha also indicates the Prophet ﷺ was reciting all night until his feet were swollen. One ayah from the end of Al-Ma'idah, وَإِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ وَإِن تَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ فَإِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. If you forgive them, they are your slaves. But if you punish them, they are your slaves. But if you forgive them, you are great and wise. This one ayah, he would repeat the entire night. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then she said he collapsed into sajda and said, Ummati, Ummati. This is how he's thinking about his ummah. The whole night thinking about you and me. Right? So he has that special connection. So thinking about the sins of his ummah was a burden on his back. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And of course, you have the one hadith, and there's weakness in the hadith. In the hadith of the Tafsir of Samarqandi, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he beyond the Sitratul Muntaha, he says, "At-tahiyatu lillahi was-salawatu wat-tayyibat." Right? This is what we say obviously in the prayer. Allah responds, "Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh." What's the next line? Assalamu alayna. Who's na? The ummah. This is the Prophet's response to what Allah said. Peace be upon us and the righteous servants of God. So alayna, the Sahaba. Wa ibadullah salihin, the rest of the ummah. According to the muhaddithin of this hadith. There is some weakness in the hadith, but the ulama generally will quote the hadith as being true in its meaning. Okay. So part of the wizr then being taken off his back is a shafa'ah, the intercession, the shafa'ah. And again, this goes back to the previous surah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the previous surah, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Soon will your Lord gift you something. A'ata. Right? There's a difference between wa'aba and ata and a'ata. They all mean to give, but there's subtle differences. Yu'tika, mean you give something to someone because they deserve it. They have some meritorious quality, and you can never take it back. It's a gift. This is you because you deserve. This is yours because you deserve it. Immediately you'll be pleased. And according to Imam Suyuti, when this verse was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Lan arda wa wahidun min ummati fi an-nar." I will never be pleased while one person from my ummah is in the fire. Right? So the meaning of the ayah then, according to the ulama, is what is this thing? What is this thing that Allah will give the Prophet ﷺ? The shafa'ah. The shafa'ah. So this carries into the next surah. وَوَدَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ. Part of this wizard that almost broke his back, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is thinking about the sins of the ummah. That eventually there will be a shafa'ah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to move quickly. I think we're out of time. Do we have to stop now? Can we go a few more minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we're going to have to move quickly. الَّذِي أَنْقَضَ ظَهْرَكَ. So we mentioned that. And did we not remove your burden, which was breaking your back? أَنْقَضَ ظَهْرَكَ. Breaking your back. Again, majaz aqli. This is a metaphor, right, to demonstrate how burdensome this wizard actually was for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. You can write a volume on this verse. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. Imam al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, and Imam al-Alusi, they all mention a hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, which Jibreel alayhi salam came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and says, "Your Lord says, do you know how I elevated your mention? كيف رفعت ذكرك? Do you know how I elevated your mention?" And the Prophet said, "Allahu a'lam." And then Jibreel alayhi salam, quoting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says, إِذَا ذُكِرْتُ ذُكِرْتَ مَعِي. That whenever I am mentioned, you are mentioned. Whenever I am mentioned, you are mentioned. Imam Suyuti says, بِأَنْ تُذْكَرَ مَعَ ذِكْرِي فِي الْأَذَانِ وَالْإِقَامَةِ وَالتَّشَهُّدِ وَالْخُطْبَةِ وَغَيْرِهَا. That you are mentioned with me in the adhan, the iqamah for prayer, the tashahhud in the prayer, whenever a khatib gives a khutbah, you are mentioned, and other things as well. جَعَلَ إِسْمُهُ مَقْرُونًا بِإِسْمِ اللَّهِ. Allah made His name next to the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the meanings of وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. And again, here we have the same type of construction as أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ. Again, لَامُ تَعْلِيل, that's brought forward, right? Exclusively for you. in a way that's special for you. And then we have a delay again. إطالة ذكر المفعول. We have a delay of the direct object. So again, it creates this shawq, this tashwiq, this hunger, this anticipation. What did he raise? وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. Your name, your mention. Okay? There's many things that many of the Mufassirin say about this ayah. It's the most popular name in the world, the name of the Prophet ﷺ. Muhammad is the most popular name in the world. Fakhruddin al-Razi says, اسمه مكتوبا على العرش. The name of the Prophet ﷺ is written upon the throne, the divine throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The name of the Prophet ﷺ is there. Imam al-Baydawi, he mentioned something. He says, this means the obedience of Allah is the same as the Prophet's obedience. His obedience, with a capital H, is the same as his obedience, the lowercase h. The obedience is the same. And Imam al-Zamakhshari, he also mentions this as well. And this is based on ayat in the Qur'an. مَن يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ. Whoever obeys the messenger, obeys Allah. Right? Whoever obeys the messenger, obeys Allah. مَنْ أَطَاعَنِي فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهِ. The Prophet ﷺ said, أو كما قال, he said, whoever obeys me, obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Qurtubi mentions the verse in the Qur'an, وَاللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَحَقُّ أَنْ يُرْضُوهُ. Allah and His Messenger, it is more befitting that you please Him. Who? Right? It doesn't say huma, it's singular. And Imam Qurtubi says here, the singular pronoun is used to demonstrate a very personal relationship between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is Surah Tawbah, ayah number 62. Wallahu wa rasuluhu. Allah and His Messenger. Ahaqqu an yurduhu. It is more fitting that you please Him, not them. Him, singular. Because obedience to the Messenger is the same as obedience to Allah. You cannot obey Allah and disobey the Messenger, nor vice versa. It's the same obedience. This is one of the meanings of وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. Imam Qurtubi also mentions all of the prophets knew about him. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. All of the prophets, he's mentioned in all of the books of the prophets. And this is something that, if you want to take my comparative religion class, we talk about a lot. And then also he mentions he's called in the Quran by al-Qab, by titles. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the Prophet ﷺ by his title. Very rarely does Allah mention the first name of the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran, and never does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly address him by his first name. But above all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses the Prophet ﷺ based on the ayah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتُهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says blessings of peace upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the angels as well. So it's not only the quantity, but the quality of the dhikr. Literally, the name, the dhikr of the Prophet is elevated because 24/7 somebody's making adhan. Somebody's making iqam. Right? But that aside, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels are pronouncing blessings of peace upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so this ends the first part here, the 4 rhetorical questions, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using this rhetorical device to remind the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of blessings from the past. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. This fa is called fa tafsiriyya, meaning therefore, based on what I just said, therefore, إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. With the usr. What is an usr? It is a hardship. Therefore, you should know, this is really a promise. This is a wa'd, a promise. Because what's going on at the time of this surah, there's a lot of hardship. And the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, they know the hardship that's happening, obviously. So there's an alif lam here, right? There's a definite article. Inna ma'a al-usri. Al. This al means that it's ahdiyah, according to the Mufassirin. Meaning that they know what it's referring to. There's a referent that's known. What is this hardship that Allah is talking about? The Prophet knows what it is, and so do the Sahaba. It's very clear, right? So, with this particular usr, there's a yusran. There is an ease. And this ease, this word, does not have an alif lam. There's no definite article. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ. This is the following. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Because there's a waw at the last ayat. Right? One of my teachers, Imam Suhaili, explained it. If you ever watch a boxing match, they introduce the fighter. He says, in this corner, the Italian stallion, undefeated, there's no undefeated, why? Because it creates energy, excitement. It emphasizes it, right? So that's Wallahu a'lam, this is what's going on here. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا وَإِنَّ. It's just straight inna, harf tawqeed. But why is it mentioned twice? The ulama say, one is for this life, one yusr is for this life, and the next yusr is for the next life. There's an ease in this life, and there's going to be an ease in the next life. Others say, the first yusr is for the past, the next one is for the future. And some of them say, this is interesting, they say that there's tawqeed lafzi, there's emphasis that's lafzi, meaning it's pronounced. In other words, he's repeating the same thing twice, almost verbatim, out of comfort for the Prophet ﷺ. So for example, your child gets hurt. You say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. You keep repeating it. It's okay, it's okay. Why do you do that? Right? It's for comfort. Right? So this is, Wallahu a'lam. Some of the ulama mentioned this as well. Why this is mentioned. Or say, I promise, I promise. Are you going to do this? I promise, I promise. You mention it twice. Right? Tawqeed lafzi. This is called tawqeed lafzi. When you actually repeat something over again. Right? The same words. That's verses 5 and 6. So that takes us to the end, 7 and 8. Now we have two commands. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. So, therefore, when you are free, right? فَرَغْتَ means you have free time, you're done with something. فَانْصَبْ. This verse, nasaba, means to stand or to peg something. Peg something. Right? To establish something. So the ulama say here, this means that when you're free from your da'wah during the day, then peg yourself at night. What does that mean? Peg yourself? That means pray at night. Make yourself like a peg, right? And pray at night. Because the Prophet ﷺ, his greatest pleasure is the prayer. So you can imagine during the day, he's dealing with kuffar, with these jahilin making fun of him, and he's probably thinking, I wish it was night so I can go be with my Lord and pray. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ. No, you have work to do during the day. When you're free from that, then fansab. Then peg yourself. Then stand yourself up and pray. Qiyamul layl. Qiyam was his refueling, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. For us, our refueling is doing God knows what. Right? I need to unwind by doing X, Y, and Z. His unwinding, his refueling, was the actual prayer. This is where he gets his strength from. So, part of the meaning is that your job is never done. You must keep going. Right? So one of my teachers said one time they were studying something, and then they stopped, they took a break, the teacher walked in and said, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. When you're free, do something else. In other words, do something else. Don't just relax. Now start writing it. Now do something, make a dhikr. Do something. Don't just relax and do nothing. Right? The Prophet ﷺ would never do nothing. He's always doing something, even if he's thinking, contemplating. Right? Again, nasaba, the verb, is transitive. Which means what? It needs a direct object. But if you notice here, there's no direct object. فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. When you're free, then labor or do or peg or however you want to translate that. Do something. Do what? Do. Right? There's no maf'ul bihi. This is called at-tawassur fil ma'na. Expansion of the meaning. Quite common in the Qur'an, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will leave off the direct object. He'll leave off the maf'ul bihi. Right? In order to get the listener to think about what it might be, or in order for the listener to fill in the blank. Right? Whatever it is that's virtuous, you can fill it in and do that. Tawassu' fil ma'na, expansion of the meaning. And then verse 8, وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَب, and to your Lord be lovingly devoted. So, raghiba, right, to ask, to desire, to wish, along with hope. Imam Suyuti says that this means tadarru, to beg, to implore, to supplicate deeply. So they say here, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. When you're done with your da'wah during the day, peg yourself and pray, and then when you're done with that, turn in supplication. وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَب, make dua. So you have to work, make da'wah, then you pray, then you make dua. Work, da'wah, dua. Work, da'wah, dua. This is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here. And in another qira'ah, it says, وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغِب. It's another way of reading the ayah, which would make it causative. In that case it means, and towards your Lord, give others hope. Or, and towards your Lord, command them to make dua. Okay? So there's a difference in reading here. Both meanings are sound. And we're out of time. Any questions or comments? I know I went very quickly. Hopefully that was coherent. You guys get anything out of that, inshallah?
I was wondering, so you said these surahs are, they're like for consoling. Okay, so I was wondering, when you were talking about like the expansion of the chest, so I know when you're like really sad and you're like crying, or when you're panicking, like you feel like your chest is constricted, right?
Yes.
So is it also kind of related to that, that when you gain more knowledge about the meaning of life and your purpose in life,
Of course, yeah.
direction you more at peace?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, the ulama do mention that the Prophet ﷺ, also Musa alayhi salam, because he was sort of unsure what his mission entailed, right? In the Torah, he totally tries to get out of it, right? The Torah version of that story. So, no, pick somebody else, I'm this and I'm that. I can't do this. And it's like this long argument he has, right? That's in the Torah. But in the story in the Qur'an, Rabbi Shrah li Sadri, is because he wanted more meanings as to what his mission entailed, because that would console his heart. Because he saw it as something so difficult, he felt constriction in his heart. So when you have more meanings, right, then you can feel your heart ease. It expands, so to speak. Right. So the ulama mentioned that that knowledge, right? The sign of a heart that's mashru' is one that is a person who has knowledge of deen. The sign of a heart that's been expanded is someone who has ilm. Knowledge will expand the heart. That's why in the Quran, Rabbi zidni ilma, right? Rabbi zidni ilma. Everyone should know this dua. It's very, very short, beautiful dua, and you can make it plural. How do you say Rabbi zidni ilma? Plural. Rabbi zidna ilma. Good. Huh? No. Yeah, it's beautiful dua. The best dua from the Quran, and then from the prophetic invocation. So people are going through depression, they feel tightness or constriction in their heart. You know, a lot of times they leave the Quran, they leave learning because they think, well, I don't feel up to it. So they go do something like they eat or something, right? They go watch soap operas, something like that. No, the remedy for that is the Quran. Because the Quran says itself, this is a shifa. Lima fi sudur. This is a shifa. This is a healing for whatever is in the heart, in the sudur. So you want your sadr to be expanded, go back to the Quran. And you feel better, you'll see it. You're feeling depressed, just read a surah from the Quran, read a translation, you now feel much better. It works. صلى الله عليه وسلم